World War I looked very different from different perspectives, but they all knew it was horrific.
This is a war between nations, and the national governments have to make an argument to their people about why they should sacrifice their lives, their time, their money for the war effort.
The thing you have to understand about Germany and France is they were in the middle of it. They were trapped. They had no option to leave the war early. They had no option to do anything else. They had to fight. The British and the Russians, on the other hand, were a little bit more distant. The Russians on one end, the British on the other end.
Britain is looking at it first as, oh, our allies are in danger, we're going to help them. I don't think they ever saw themselves immediately threatened until they realized that the Germans were developing new types of aerial combat. That had never been seen before. This changes the way they look at the world. It makes them push tremendously hard into developing new technology for fighting wars.
In France, World War I is a necessary evil at the beginning of the war. They're chafing at the bit from the loss of Alsace-Lorraine during the Franco-Prussian War. And they want to get the lost territories back. So it's to redeem France. In Russia, it's the love of the Tsar and pan-Slavism. They have to help their Slavic brothers oppressed by the Austro-Hungarians. So everybody has a different reason for wanting to go to war in the summer of 1914. All of them seem compelling.
The United States, by contrast, was completely distant. We were separated by 3,000 miles of the Atlantic Ocean.
President Woodrow Wilson, who was in office when the war started, took an isolationist view. He felt that America did not need to be involved in this war. It wasn't our war. We didn't have a military presence overseas.
Germans feel like they are painted into a box. They've been hemmed in by foreign policy by the British. They're forced to make militaristic decisions because France and Russia, and to some extent England, are aligned against them.
What you see in Germany is toward the end of the war, the soldiers were starving, their infrastructure was wearing out, they were putting everything into the fronts, and they were leaving their population in Germany destitute.
Very quickly, people understood that they were fighting a world war. The First World War was, for Europe, a war of empires, a war about empires. So violence and war had always been part of that project. But that was largely carried out outside of Europe. And then, as Europe itself collapses into war, much of the violence of imperial rivalry actually plays out on the European continent and brings that crisis back home to Europe.